Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful and inspiring journeys of personal growth and transformation. Today's story is about Sophia, a dedicated nurse who spent years sacrificing her personal life for her family's well-being, only to find herself betrayed. But when she stood up for herself and fought for what was rightfully hers, everything changed. This is a tale of resilience, strength, and the ultimate lesson that sometimes the greatest act of love is to put yourself first. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to start today's story. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of a new chapter in our lives. I had spent months preparing for this day, making sure everything was perfect. The house, a colonial beauty with a wraparound porch and a large garden, was everything I had dreamed of. It was going to be my investment, my chance to make something of myself, and perhaps, finally, my way of earning my parents' love and approval. I had sacrificed so much to get here. As a nurse, I had worked double shifts, spending long nights in the ICU, watching families grieve while I pushed myself harder, always for the next step. I had saved every penny I could. When my parents were about to lose their house, I didn't hesitate for a second. I offered them my entire savings, $175, to help them buy a new place. The agreement was clear. I would provide the down payment, and the house would be in my name. It was simple, logical, and I thought, fair. But that afternoon, as I stood in the kitchen of the house I had poured my heart and soul into, everything came crashing down. I had just returned from Target, where I spent hours picking out new decorations for the house. The fluffy towels for the bathrooms, the cheerful throw pillows for the living room, the home sweet home welcome mat. They were all supposed to be symbols of a new beginning. Yet, as I looked at the faces around me, the dream I had fought so hard for was slipping away. My mother's voice cut through the quiet hum of the party, sharp and dismissive. "You're being ridiculous, Sophia. Kyle needs this more than you do," she said, waving the deed in my face. "He has a family to support. What do you have? Just yourself." Those words hit me like a slap across the face. They stung far more than I had ever anticipated. I could barely breathe as I stood there, frozen in the kitchen, surrounded by the awkward glances of my extended family and friends. My stepbrother, Kyle, stood smugly beside her, his arms folded, his expression one of complete entitlement. I could feel the hot flush of anger rising in my chest as I tried to steady myself. How had this happened? How had I been reduced to this? Here I was, the one who had worked tirelessly, sacrificing my personal life and happiness for years, only to watch someone who had never contributed a thing to the family's well-being, someone who had repeatedly failed in his own business ventures, take the reward I had earned. My mind raced as I replayed every moment of sacrifice, every extra shift I had worked, every holiday I had missed to save up for this. It was supposed to be my victory, my reward for years of hard work and dedication. But instead, it was being handed over to someone who hadn't earned it. I could feel the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. The dam inside me was breaking, but I held it together, the anger replacing the hurt. "This isn't right," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "That money was everything I had. We had an agreement." "Stop being so dramatic, Sophia," my mother sighed, rolling her eyes. "You're a nurse. You'll save it up again. Kyle needs a stable home for his baby. It's not like you have anyone to provide for." I could feel the sharp edge of her words digging deeper, each one carving away at the years of sacrifice I had made, the loyalty I had shown to this family. But it was no use. The years of always being the reliable one, the one who gave and gave until there was nothing left for herself, had come to a head. I had always thought my sacrifices would be appreciated, that someday my parents would see the value of what I had done. But now, in this moment, I understood. It wasn't about me. It never had been. I was just the one who could always be relied upon to make things right when the world around us fell apart. Kyle had never worked hard for anything. I had watched him squander every opportunity, from failed businesses to reckless financial decisions. Each time he failed, my parents bailed him out, refinancing their house to cover his mistakes, draining their savings, all while I quietly watched. When I had helped them with the house, I thought it would change something. I thought it would show them I was worthy of their love. That I could be more than the responsible one. But here I was, standing in a house I had helped purchase, only to have it handed over to someone who had never earned it. In that moment, I realized the truth. They had no idea what they were doing to me. They had no idea how much this hurt. They didn't understand the years I had spent working myself to exhaustion. The lonely nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering when I would ever get a break, when I would ever be seen for who I really was. I thought I could forgive them. But I couldn't. Not anymore. As I stood in that kitchen, watching them celebrate Kyle's new home, I knew something inside me had snapped. I could no longer be the reliable daughter who always sacrificed for others without ever asking for anything in return. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I would stop letting them take everything from me. I was done. The housewarming party continued around me. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses a stark contrast to the chaos brewing inside me. I could barely hear the conversations anymore. My thoughts consumed by a single question. How could they do this to me? The hurt was one thing. But the sense of betrayal was something deeper. Something more visceral. How had I ended up here? Standing alone, while Kyle, the one who had never once shown any responsibility, reaped the rewards of my hard work? I excused myself, needing air. My chest felt tight, and I didn't trust myself to remain composed. I stepped out onto the back porch, the cold evening air biting at my skin, offering a brief respite from the emotional storm that raged within. I needed to think. My best friend, Rachel, had been watching everything unfold, standing quietly in the background. She had always been there, her support unwavering through every difficult chapter of my life. I walked back inside, her worried eyes following me. She was waiting for me to make a move, to do something about the situation that had spiraled out of control. You need to call Marcus, she whispered, her voice low and urgent. Something's not right about how they transferred the deed. They couldn't have done this legally without your signature. The name Marcus was a lifeline in that moment. Marcus was a real estate attorney. And though I had never thought I would need his services, now seemed to be the time. I couldn't stand the thought of my family getting away with this. The house wasn't just a house to me. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice. The symbol of everything I had worked for. It was mine, and I had the paperwork to prove it. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling as I texted Marcus, explaining the situation briefly. Are you free tomorrow? I need legal help. I hit send and waited. The seconds felt like hours. His reply came quickly. Rachel told me what happened. Come to my office at 9 a.m. Bring all the paperwork you have. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just let this go. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about standing up for myself. This was about finally having the courage to demand what was rightfully mine. I couldn't let my family manipulate me any longer. Let them push me into the role of the dependable, sacrificial daughter who always came through, no matter the cost to myself. The next morning, I arrived at Marcus's office, clutching the folder with all the documents in my hands. My heart was pounding in my chest as I entered the office. My mind a whirl of emotions. I sat down across from Marcus, my hands resting on the table, clutching the papers like a lifeline. Here it is, I said, my voice more steady than I felt. The original agreement I signed. The house was supposed to be in my name. I provided the down payment. Marcus looked at the documents, nodding as he carefully reviewed them. His expression shifted from professional detachment to something more serious as he read the warning letter from their lawyer. They really messed up here, he said after a long pause. This deed transfer isn't just questionable. It's fraudulent. His words hit me harder than I expected. Fraudulent. The word echoed in my mind. I had never imagined my family would betray me like this, let alone commit fraud. But here it was, in black and white. The transfer of the deed had been illegal. And worse, I had been so trusting, so naive, thinking that my family would honor the agreement we had made. You provided the down payment. You signed the initial paperwork. There's clear documentation of the agreement. Marcus continued. They can't legally give away a house that was meant to be yours. I sat there, stunned, as Marcus's words sank in. The thought of my parents and Kyle facing legal consequences had never crossed my mind. I wasn't looking for punishment. Not really. But now that I knew what they had done, it seemed impossible to walk away without standing up for myself. Marcus made a call to his colleague at the district attorney's office, explaining the situation. This could result in criminal charges, he said, looking up at me. What they did was grand theft. They committed fraud. And based on these bank statements, it looks like they might have forged your signature on some documents. The gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about something much bigger. This was about my life savings, my trust, my relationship with my family. And I couldn't let them get away with it. They're counting on you being too nice to fight back, Marcus said, his voice firm. But you have the law on your side. And you have the right to fight for what's yours. The words resonated with me, stirring something inside me I hadn't felt in a long time. It was time to stop being the one who always forgave, the one who always let things slide. It was time to stand up for myself. I want my house back, I said, my voice steady, and I want them to understand that they can't treat me like this anymore. Marcus nodded, already typing on his computer. I'm filing an emergency injunction to prevent them from making any changes to the property. Then we'll proceed with legal action to void the transfer. They'll be served with papers by tomorrow. As I left Marcus's office that morning, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. For the first time in months. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was calm, focused, and ready to take control of my life. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew my family would fight back. But I also knew this was the only way forward. The only way to take back what had been stolen from me. To reclaim my power. And I would do whatever it took to make that happen. The days following my decision to take legal action were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and an overwhelming sense of determination. I had never felt more alive, more focused, and for the first time, I was doing something solely for myself. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my worth, and my voice. I wasn't going to let them steal my future without a fight. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from my mother, my stepfather, and, of course, Kyle. The texts varied in tone, some angry, some pleading, others tinged with guilt. My mother's messages were particularly hard to read. She alternated between trying to manipulate me with guilt trips and demanding that I be the family member I was always meant to be. She tried to pull at my heartstrings, reminding me of all the times I had helped them, all the sacrifices I had made. But each message only made me more resolute. That evening, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers in front of me. They were a mixture of legal documents, correspondence with Marcus, and a copy of the original agreement that had started this entire mess. I could still see my mother's face, her cold dismissal of my sacrifice. I could still hear Kyle's smug voice as he stood there, pretending like he deserved everything I had worked for. A knock on the door broke my concentration. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, her eyes full of concern. "How are you holding up?" she asked, stepping inside. "I'm fine," I replied, though I could hear the strain in my own voice. "It's just, this isn't how I imagined my life turning out. I thought, that after all this time, they would see me, they would finally appreciate me. But instead, they just keep taking." Rachel sat down across from me, her gaze soft. "I know," she said gently. "It's hard, but you're doing the right thing. You're standing up for yourself in a way that you never have before." Her words were comforting, but the truth was that I still felt like a stranger to myself in some ways. I had always been the one who held things together, the one who sacrificed for others without complaint. But now, I was the one fighting for what was rightfully mine. And it wasn't easy. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on my shoulders, especially as I thought about the consequences my family might face. The next morning, I woke up to another barrage of texts. This time, my mother's message was particularly direct. "Sophia, please, don't do this. We can fix this as a family. The house was meant to help Kyle and his baby. You know he needs stability." The thought of Kyle, the one who had always failed, the one who had squandered every chance given to him, now standing at the center of the family's plans, was almost too much to bear. He had never done anything to earn this. And yet, he was being handed everything on a silver platter. As the day wore on, the pressure mounted. I had an appointment with Marcus to review the final steps in the legal process. I could feel my anxiety rising, my mind racing with what ifs and doubts. What if they fought back? What if this tore my family apart forever? But as I sat in Marcus's office, looking at the legal paperwork spread out before me, something shifted within me. I had no more doubt. I had no more fear. I had spent my whole life letting my family walk all over me. Letting them use me, take from me, without ever asking for anything in return. But now, I was doing something for myself. I was fighting for the life I had worked so hard to build. All the paperwork is in order, Marcus said as he looked over the final documents. I'll file for the injunction immediately. Once the papers are served, they won't be able to make any changes to the property until the case is resolved. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The legal battle wasn't over yet, but I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. I was no longer the girl who always took a backseat to others. I was the woman who was finally taking control of her own story. Later that evening, I received a call from Rachel. Sophia, she said, her voice urgent. Your mom and Kyle are outside your building. They're making a scene, shouting at everyone who comes by. They want you to come downstairs. I felt my stomach tighten. I wasn't ready to face them. Not yet, but I knew I had to. I couldn't keep avoiding them, running away from the confrontation that I knew was inevitable. I went downstairs, steeling myself for what was to come. As I stepped outside, I saw Kyle pacing back and forth, his face flushed with anger. My mother was standing by the door, her arms crossed, her face a mix of pleading and frustration. You have to stop this. My mom cried, her voice breaking. This is going to tear our family apart. I can't lose you over this. The guilt she tried to force on me was familiar, like an old wound that had never fully healed. But this time, it didn't hurt. This time, I didn't feel the weight of her manipulation. I'm not the one tearing the family apart, I replied, my voice calm, but firm. You and Kyle made your choices. And now, you're living with the consequences. Kyle stepped forward, his face red with anger. You're being ridiculous. He spat. I have a baby on the way. What were you going to do with that house anyway? Live there alone with your cats? I could feel the anger rising in my chest again. But I forced myself to remain composed. I pulled out my phone, showing them the letter from their lawyer. The one warning them that what they had done was illegal. I have all the proof I need. I said, do you really want to go down this road? Because if you do, you're going to regret it. For a moment, they both stood there, stunned. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to them, to justify my actions. I had nothing left to prove. This was about me, and I wasn't going to let them take that from me anymore. You can't win, Sophia, my mother whispered, tears welling in her eyes. You're going to lose everything. No, Mom, I said quietly, looking her in the eye. You've already lost everything, but I'm not going to lose myself. With that, I turned and walked back into the building, leaving them to face the consequences of their own actions. As the days passed, my life began to settle into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. I had reclaimed what was mine, not just the house, but my peace, my self-worth, and my sense of control. I had learned the hard way that standing up for myself wasn't about being selfish. It was about honoring my own needs and respecting my boundaries. The house, once a symbol of all I had sacrificed, was now a reminder of my strength and resilience. I had sold it, and with the proceeds, I bought the cottage of my dreams. A place where I could finally breathe, create, and truly live. The garden I planted was thriving, the soil rich with possibilities. Much like my newfound sense of freedom, Rachel often came over, bringing with her the joy of friendship and the occasional laugh at how far I had come. Sometimes, we'd sit on the porch, watching the sunset, talking about the future, and I'd feel a sense of gratitude for the lessons life had taught me. The truth was, I wasn't the same person I had been a year ago. I had shed the skin of self-doubt and fear and emerged stronger, more confident, and Most importantly, free. My family still struggled, but I no longer carried their burdens. I had finally learned that the kindest thing I could do for them, and for myself, was to let them face the consequences of their actions. I was no longer the doormat. I had chosen to live authentically. And that, in the end, was the greatest reward. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring life stories.